The purpose of our data models and user experience is to model real-world entities. In our example, we're modeling a pet. Like many real-world entities, pets have a real life cycle. They are born, they sometimes get sick and recover, eventually they get sick and die. What we're going to do now is model the life cycle of a pet. So we go to our pet concept and select the Life Cycle tab. At present, our pet only has an active state, and that's the default state for our pet. So we can assume that an active pet is a healthy pet. So let's add a couple of new states. To keep it simple, let's say they get sick and eventually they are deceased. Now, there are going to be events that basically trigger the transition from the active state to the sick state. So let's add a couple of new events. So we're going to add gets sick, recovers, and dies. So at this point, we have a set of allowed states for our pet and the events that trigger state transitions. So let's create a couple of simple state transitions. When our pet is active, it might get sick, in which case it goes into the sick state. Once our pet is sick, it recovers, in which case it's active again. But every now and again, our pet is going to get sick, and it's going to die, and it's going to go into the deceased state. So at this point, we've created a state transition model for the life cycle of our pet. So let's clear the application state and then go back to our sample pet and try this out. So what we'll notice here is that we now have new actions. So our pet is currently active, and I can say our pet is going to get sick. Oh dear. So our pet is now sick, and we can either have the pet dying or recovering. Well, I like my pet, so I'm going to let it recover. And now it goes back into the active state, and we can see it can get sick again. And we can track the state transitions for our pet by looking at the milestones. So here we started in the active state, and we've basically transitioned from sick to active. If our pet gets sick again and ultimately dies, if we have a look at the transitions now, we had the pet in the active state, it got sick, it recovered, it got sick again, and then it died. The next thing we might want to do is modify the user experience depending upon the status of the pet. So if I go back to my pet, you can see that I have permissions on various objects. So I can basically make fields editable or not editable, or I can change the permission of the form as a whole. So let's say by default, the priority 0 is that we are going to allow save and delete on the form. But in a higher priority state, let's say when the pet is deceased, we are not going to allow changes, and we're not going to allow the user to delete the pet. So if I now clear the application state and go to my pet, you'll see that this pet is now locked out. I can't make any changes at all because it's deceased. If I go back to my pets and look at my cat Tanya, you'll see that cat Tanya is active, and so I can modify the fields.